Hello, it's Jennifer, and in today's video I wanted to show you how to create a unique window card. I love to do window cards and I've shown many on my blog before, but today I wanted to use this new window die, which was of course perfect for a window card. So it features some stamping on acetate and then some pieces assembled on the inside to show through the window. The die I used is from Memory Box. It's actually Poppy Stamps, which is a division of Memory Box. It's the Grand Window die, Grand Madison window die. And I die cut it from white cardstock. And then I use the Simon Says stamp tree dies to cut the 3 green triangles. Now, these dies you could use on any die cut machine. I used mine on my Vagabond, but you can use Cuttlebug, anything you have. And then I also cut a piece of pool cardstock to fit just behind the window, and also a piece of acetate from a Hero Arts note card that fits just behind the window also. You could use any kind of transparency or packaging, clear packaging for the window. Now just some tips on stamping on acetate. You can see I have some snowflakes stamped on the acetate here, so they kind of look like they're floating along the window. Now, stamping on acetate can be tricky because it wants to move, but I wanted to just do a few little snowflakes. So I'm just grabbing a few Hero Arts clear stamp sets and taking off some of the snowflakes from the sets. So I have 3 little snowflakes. Now to keep the transparency from moving while I'm stamping on it, I'm going to use just a couple pieces of washi tape to hold it in place. Now I've actually never used washi tape on a card, but it works great on holding acetate in place. Now I'm using the white StazOn ink. This is a very unique ink. It needs to be re-inked every time you use it. And you just want to stamp straight down and straight up onto the acetate. Now if you stamp and you find you don't like how it looks, never fear, you can use an alcohol swab to kind of wipe it away and start over. But I'm just going to stamp these a few times over the acetate, kind of scatter them around along with the other size snowflakes too. Again, this white StazOn ink, it's perfect for stamping on acetate, but it does need to be re-inked every time. And you can see you get really vivid color on the acetate. They do also have some color versions of this in platinum and gold, but white is by far my favorite. And so you can see here that the snowflakes are just enough to add a little something to the acetate window. Now I wanted to create a hole in the front of the card that was about the size of this window. So here's the trick I did. There's a few ways to do this, but I found this to be the easiest. I'm just marking where the corners of the windows are. And now I'm going to go through and make little marks that are just a little bit out from that, a little higher and to the side from each of those dots. So I'm going to cut up into those little cross hatches that I made there. Now I'm going to use my Fiskars trimmer. This is my favorite of all the trimmers. It's got a wire guide to help you cut certain things like this. So this is a situation where this wire guide trimmer is really helpful. I'm going to cut from one of the cross hatches to the other, and I'm just going to do all 4 sides. So basically I'm just cutting a hole that's slightly bigger than the opening on the windows of that window die cut that I created. So you can see that wire guide shows exactly where it's going to cut. So I'm just going to go between the cross hatches. This would be hard with some of those guillotine trimmers or other kinds of trimmers out there. That's why I really like this one from Fiskars. They also have a titanium blade for this trimmer now, and this just lasts forever. I haven't actually had to change my blade since I got that new titanium blade. And after I'm done cutting, I'll just erase my little cross hatches, and there I have a window that's slightly smaller than the die cut that we are covering it with. Now I wanted to add some texture to the background because it's a really heavy window die on the front, so I'm using this embossing folder. It's from Crafter's Companion, and it's just some great dots, and I like that it's bigger, so you can cover a bigger piece of cardstock. Or if, say it was a pattern that went a certain direction, you could turn your paper to emboss in the other direction. But in this case, it's just dots, so it doesn't matter. Anyways, I just ran this through my Vagabond. You could use any die cut machine to do it, and it gives a great texture to that background cardstock. So now I want to add that acetate to the back of the window. That StazOn takes some time to dry, so I just walked away for a couple hours and came back and it was dry. It doesn't take that long, but I just wanted to be for sure. Now I'm just going to glue this right onto the back of the window die cut, and there you have, it just looks like those snowflakes are just kind of floating along there. It's really kind of fun, and you could do this with any kind of shape, anything you want to just kind of make it look like the images are floating. And then of course I wanted to pop it up to really enhance that floating look, so I'm just using foam dots to add it onto the front of the card. Now I also wanted to show something from the inside, so I assembled this little scene on the inside to show through the window. I started with this Impression Obsession fluff background stamp. I think it's perfect for a snowy sky. And here are its mid-tone Tide pool color. It's a great pool color. I'm going to stamp it onto some pool cardstock, and that pool cardstock is just cut about the same size as that window hole that I cut. I'm just going to transfer all that ink onto the piece, and there we have a great kind of snow-filled sky. So now I'm going to use my Tombow stamp runner to add adhesive. I got a lot of questions about this adhesive. I really like it. It's wonderful because you can just use it as regular adhesive and roll it right on, and you can rub it away if you decide you want it somewhere else, which is a great bonus. And you can also use this to stamp some adhesive on. So you just hold onto the pink part and press down. I'll do it from the side so you can see. I hold onto the pink, press down, and it puts down like a square of those adhesive dots. So it's great, just a dab in each corner is all you need for a good amount of adhesive. So you can use that stamp runner in either way. It's a great adhesive, and it's one of the ones that I reach for the most. So there I've added it to the inside of the card, and I wanted to make my trees have a little something extra. Instead of stamping, I decided to do some embossing on it, and I'm using this new embossing folder from Lifestyle Crafts. It comes with another folder that has a bunch of little triangles, but here I'm just going to use the diagonal lines. I think this is fantastic background for any, and it works for pretty much any style of card. So I'm just going to put the trees in here, close it up, and then run it through my Vagabond. But again, you can use any die cut machine with these embossing folders. And you can see you get this fun diagonal line texture that I think is perfect for these trees. So I want to position these to show through the window. So I've put adhesive on the back of the tree, and now I'm just kind of holding it up against the back of the window to position it where I want, and then I'm going to close it down onto the pool piece inside. So that presses the glue onto the pool piece, and now I'm sure that I like the positioning. So I'll go ahead and do that with the other two pieces also. Make sure that it shows through and then press it down. And so I have all three kind of scattered behind the window. Then I'm going to use that same trimmer to do some thin cuts of brown cardstock. This trimmer is really easy to do fine, thin cuts. And these will be perfect for tree trunks for the little trees. I'll take two of the strips and hold them together and then run the stamp runner across it to apply adhesive to each. You can see how easy that is to do. And then add these to the card. This adhesive is great again because you can move it while you're working, but then it ends up drying permanent. So it's a really good adhesive to work with, but also to make sure things will hold in the long run. So I'll just tuck these little tree trunks underneath the trees, and then I'll cut the ends off the bottom of the card. And you can see they show through the window also, which is great. Now I wanted to add a place to write a message, kind of covered up all the inside of the card, so I'm just going to cut a curve here, like a wave, for a snowbank, and I'll add that to the bottom of the card. And it's just enough room to write a quick thank you message to the recipient. So I'll just take this and glue this down on the inside, but I want to make sure it doesn't show through onto the window on the front. So I'm just going to make sure it's low enough and then glue it in place and trim off all the extra. Another way I could have done this is have that whole pool piece be a flap that opens and have the message underneath it. So it kind of opens in two different ways and hides the message on the inside. But I just wanted a little space for a message, so I just did the little snowbank. And here I'll go ahead and cut off the extra. Now I decided that I wanted to add some little stars to the top of my trees. For some reason I put stars on top of all of my trees. And so I'm just doing a little dab of glossy accents. This is a great adhesive that will never let go. So I'm just going to add little yellow stars that I cut from that same Simon Says Stamp tree die set. It comes with a little star, you can see it there. And I'll just add these little stars to the top of the tree. And here you can see the scene on the inside showing through the window. Next, I wanted to add my embossed greeting to the front and also some little hearts to just kind of add a pop of color. I used the Martha Stewart heart border punch to create these little hearts. I've actually never used this border punch for borders. I just use it for the little hearts that it creates. And I'll add these to the card. It just gives a nice pop of color. But before I glue them down, I wanted to go ahead and do my greeting strip. So I'm using this new set from Simon Says Stamp. It has lots of different thank you greetings. I'm going to use a small one that says thanks, and I'll just stamp it with Versamark ink at the bottom of a piece of cardstock. This cardstock that I'm using is Nina Desert Storm. It's a great light colored craft that works with just about any kind of card. So I'll go ahead and add some white embossing powder and heat this up. Now, I decided to keep the greeting kind of small since this was a busy card, but I also wanted to anchor it onto the card with something, and that's why I'm using those little hearts to kind of hold it into place. Now that I've embossed this, I'll just take my trimmer and I can use that wire guide to know exactly where I'm going to cut, and there I have the perfect strip. I find it's easier to emboss or stamp something on the bottom of a big piece of cardstock and then trim it. It just seems easier for me to do. Then I cut the ends to a V, and there we have my greeting strip. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this onto the card. I'll go ahead and add a little bit of glossy accents with one of those hearts, and you can see now that greeting isn't just floating on the card, it's anchored on with this heart. And I'm going to put some glue behind this, and so you won't see the glue on the acetate. So I'm just going to put the glue behind the heart only, and it'll just kind of float out in front of it. So again, that heart just anchors it in place. It doesn't, so I don't have a greeting that's just floating there. And then I added two other little hearts to the front, and I'm going to put this heart on the inside. I want to make sure that it's hidden. So it's a little heart surprise on the inside. It's hidden behind the big heart that's on the outside. So those little pops of color just add a little bit of fun to the card. And you can see on that little white area on the inside, I could write a personal greeting. Now I decided I wanted to add a little bit of shading to this die cut, and I love die cuts. I use them all the time, but sometimes they look kind of boring, and I wanted to add some dimension or depth to it. So I actually used Copics to add a little bit of shading to the window die cut here. It's hard to see in the video, but in real life it really makes a big difference. I'm just taking a light gray Copic. I think I'm using C00 here, and I'm just adding a little bit of shading onto some of the areas of this die cut that are embossed. This die actually does a little bit of embossing too. You can see the lines there. But by adding some shading with the Copic marker, it just gives it a little bit of dimension, just defines it a little bit more. It really makes quite a big difference in real life. So those light colored Copics are worth just an investment to kind of enhance some die cuts. I also decided that on the edge I wanted to add a little oomph, so I'm using an ink blending tool and lightly applying Antique Linen Distress Ink, which is a really light brown ink, just to give some depth. I'm not trying to give it a distressed look, but just a little bit of depth to the edge of the card. I felt like everything was real heavy on the middle of the card, so I wanted to kind of add some depth around the edges too. So there you have it, a window card die featuring an acetate window, some embossing, some inking, all kinds of things. And it's great to have some thank you cards for the holiday season. If you have any questions, please visit my blog, and thanks for watching.